Hi, everybody. Welcome to Books and Beyond. So, I was very, very excited because the minute that I got this book, Rethink Aging, I wanted to interview the authors. This is such a relevant topic. So, today we are very excited because we're going to be speaking to the authors of this book called Rethink Aging Lessons in Aging from the Older and Bolder Generation. And this is a book that challenges you to think about the way that we are aging right now in India. The authors are Nidhi Chawla and Reshmi Chakraborty. So, welcome. They are also the founders of Silver Talkies, which is a community for people who are age 55 plus, and they offer a social networking forum for people to sort of engage with that and sort of and they're really changing the way sort of the narrative around old age is being written. So that is what we're going to be finding out today in the episode.
Yes, and did you actually know that India will have over 300 million senior citizens by 2050? I did not know that. I found that through the book. And, it made me think about so many things like what do we actually do after we turn 55, right? Do we just retire and give up on life? Are there other opportunities, right? So this made me think about retirement in a completely different way.
Yeah, I think like what is so interesting is that, like my parents are both above 60. I have my grandparents. My grandfather just passed away. I have two grandmoms. And, as a grandchild, you've really seen them sort of like age, and they're quite inspirational. And these things sort of hit you, especially like for kids and grandparents or people entering that age group. These kind of questions are more pertinent than ever before, because suddenly, your parents are not the young energetic people that you're used to, and they're entering a new phase. I actually gave my dad this book and tried to make him read it because he had expressed to me that, I want to learn singing, so there's a lot of questions that came up personally as well, I think, for both Michelle and I. Yeah, so before we sort of like jump into the whole thing, let's talk a little bit about Silver Talkies, which is your organization. So tell us a little bit about yourselves, how you guys started Silver Talkies, what was the need that you found for this, and then why did that translate into a book?
So, thank you so much first, Tara and Michelle, for having us here. I think it's a great opportunity, and I've been listening to your podcast and really, really enjoyed listening to them. So, thank you so much for making us a part of this series as well. So, to answer your first question, Silver Talkies actually was not something which I and Reshmi really thought about or had planned to do it. It's like I think in our life, both with the book and Silver Talkies, these things have happened just by chance. So Silver Talkies actually started way back very early on in 2011 as a very small concept. We started it off as a blog. Reshmi has an extensive background in journalism. She has worked with multiple established media houses. I was pretty much on a sabbatical after having worked with McKinsey and Company, had moved to a new city, Bangalore, from Delhi, and had just been a mother to a 1.5-year-old. My daughter was that old that time. And I think in the mix of all those things, we were both kind of noticing changes that were happening with our own parents at home, right? So, for example, in my case, when my father retired, I had this very gaga, whole idea about a retirement. And I thought while he had been busy, my dad was he was working with Delhi Vidyut Board as an engineer. And he used to work in shifts, so we hardly got to see him. At best, I remember him finding time to teach me maths, or we sometimes going out, to Lajpat Nagar or India Gate. Those are my childhood memories that I have with him. So, so when he retired, I just had this whole idea that time that he never had, it would be all about that. And my retirement gift to him was, a lot of art supplies, like the best of like the Stedler pencils and whatnot, sketchbooks and stuff that I bought for him. With a very naive assumption, I would call it now, because my assumption was that he will have the whole time in the world now, and he would go back with vengeance to pick up things which he could not do. But unfortunately, that's not how it really evolved. So for him, he did dabble with those art supplies for about 3-4 months, but then after that, he kind of just went back to a very routine, to me, which felt like a very mundane way of leading life, which would be about watching TV, just going for a walk, or just again going out for errands and doing chores in the house, or so it was a very regular life, except the fact that he was not going to office. Nothing had changed, right? Similar story was transpiring in Reshmi's household as well. Her father had retired, and she found that he suddenly became very socially isolated. A man who was very active, he became very socially isolated. So much so that she started worrying a lot about him, which led her to even geriatrician's door and to figure out what was really happening, if he needed help. While her mother was, was seeing a change in her own, lifestyle and what her passions were. She was an artist, but once she became an empty nester, she really wanted to pursue her hobby, and she was rearing to become a second career entrepreneur. She actually paints these beautiful dupattas and saris, which she sells via Facebook now, right? So these were the very different kind of experiences we were happening in, which we were noticing in our own households. And when we both wanted to support our own parents and went out looking for opportunities, and this I'm talking about, as I said, way back in 2011, in that decade, there was hardly any work which was happening around older adults. In fact, it was very, very unorganized. It was very spread out. There was no media, was also not talking about it. And we were both pretty much, stay at home moms that time. And we thought, okay, why not we just start doing something in the space? And it excited us because we saw a lot of relevance and an opportunity and a need to talk about the subject. So that's how the idea of Silver Talkies came. While we started as a blog, the journey kind of evolved and moved on. In 2014, we started doing activities and events because we realized that just being an online blog, while we were seeing a lot of traction, a lot of people were reading us, reaching out to us for ideas and help, we really were not making any meaningful impact, because as we were interacting even with a lot of senior citizens who used to stay in the community, which I and Reshmi were a part of, we realized that loneliness and isolation and lack of engagement opportunities was something which was the real issue that they were all facing. So while health may be an issue that is common amongst all of them, right? And they go to the doctors, they go to specialists to take care of all of it. They have all that available to them, but loneliness and isolation and opportunities for engagement was something which was missing for everyone. And as I said, there was no work for older adults. It was only for younger adults, right? So 2014 is when we started doing events and engagement activities for seniors. So we, kind of made ourselves into an exclusive platform only for the 55 plus, because here our intention and our understanding was that they would do better, they would thrive well, if you were to put them in a peer group, a group which had their own, people in the similar age group, right? If you were to put them in a mixed group, chances are they would feel very out of place, while intergenerational bonding and interactions have a lot of meaning and importance. But for certain things, they do much better when you put them in their peer group, right? So that's how the whole idea of an exclusive community for 55 plus came about. And Silver Talkies, again, we chose a name which would really reflect that ideology. For silver, we meant the senior generation, the silver generation, and talkies, we really wanted to be their voice and really wanted to have that exclusive forum and opportunity for them. So that's broadly about, and maybe Rashmi can tell you about the book now. And I was saying everything happened by chance. So Rashmi can tell you how that happened by chance for us.
Thank you, Nidhi, and thank you, Tara, and thank you, Michelle, for having us here. It's really wonderful to be here. So like Nidhi was telling you, that has been essentially our journey. And we have also been writing about older adults. We've been working with them in every aspect. So we have had events, workshops. We have been writing about them because we also have a digital magazine that is part of Silver Talkies. So all of this sort of has given us an understanding of this whole area around aging and aging in urban India. We'd like to clarify that our focus area and the area the book covers is basically around urban India. So it's given us some sort of understanding, or maybe like a, what's the best term for it? Like a view from the side, a very close view from the sides of how it has panned out in India. And we did see this change that has been happening in terms of aging in urban India. And there are many factors that have led to this change. It is the Indian family that is seeing a huge change in the way it is structured. We are no longer joint families. We are largely nuclear families. And because of many reasons, not just because people don't want to be together, it could be because of jobs, it could be education, so many things. And then people's mindsets are also changing. Older adults now want to live very independent lives. They are focusing on themselves. So we have seen that shift happening with the people that we have been interacting and working with. And you also see this whole increase in lifespan. We keep reading about it, but it has apparently happened, and there is data to prove how lifespans have increased. So multiple factors have led to this change. And of course, there has been increase in economic solvency also in urban areas for many older adults. So they are able to focus on their own needs way more than they were able to earlier. So you could say that without really understanding it at first, that we would be seeing this journey, we've sort of seen this over the years. But then the book was never in our mind. We were writing about these things in our digital magazine and everything, when someone from Penguin, Shaini Das, happened to reach out to us. She was looking out for resources for her own parents. And in the process, she came across our website and she reached out to us. And that was really the seeding of the idea. So then we did our research and we pitched to Penguin, and then the whole process came about on our own without Shini's prompting. We really don't know if you'd have written a book, but yes, that's how it happened. And I think both of us have also evolved in our journey with Silver Talkies. How we look at issues surrounding aging and how we write about it or talk about it has also seen a change, because of the work we do. So the book was really our opportunity to bring those ideas together, and most importantly, bring all those voices together. Because if you've gone through the book, it is essentially people's stories. We are not really saying anything. We are basically bringing all those stories together. Older adults themselves are telling us how they have evolved in their, as they've grown older, what are the transitions they have undergone, what are the things they have done to ensure that they are aging healthily and actively. So that's essentially it.
Yes, and just to add to that also, Reshmi, because as you mentioned, there are these people stories which come across, right? Because though you guys have actually covered very interesting data, stats from so many interesting people, like psychiatrists, neurosurgeons, all of that. I think for me, the most interesting part of the book were the stories, especially of the people. And for me, one of the stories that stood out was Soshila Gopinath, who actually finished her PhD at 75. It is really inspiring, especially because, I had this dream of doing my PhD, I think when I was in my 20s. And then as I, just turned 30, I thought, oh, maybe it's too late. Why would I spend 7 years doing a PhD? Because, you just keep hearing about how long the process takes. And Sushila actually started it in her mid 60s. And what I loved about her story is that it was not just that, right? She was also learning how to play bridge. She was learning the stock market, and she even signed up to translate a book into Sanskrit. Oh my God. Like, it's mind blowing. And, for all our listeners, like, this is not just the only example. This is just one that stood out to me, that the book is just full of very interesting stories. And just to add something personal here. So, this whole retirement topic has been on my mind for a long time, because like Tara said, our parents are growing old. And for me, especially, the worry was that because we moved from the Gulf to India, it was, for my parents, it was not just the transition from a working life to moving to a retirement phase, but more of even a change of place. So a lot of people ask, oh, how are they, accommodating to that? And I just kept worrying about it. And for me, biggest happiness or the joy is when I see them active, basically, when they keep doing things. And your book really shined light on how it's important to keep ourselves busy, no matter how old we are in life. So, just to, add to that, Tara, which is your favorite story from the book?
I have to agree, I just loved all of the stories in the book, and it really made me think about sort of I'll come to my favorite stories, but it made me think about two of my grandmoms. And my grandmom right now, she's my dadi, she's 82 years old. And I was always so fascinated by how, she keeps going. She's a very frail lady, but she is one of the best textile designers right now, and I think the world. And she has gone on her own right now. She's 82 and she's gone to New York, with a nephew of hers. And she's exhibiting at all these museums all over the world. And I just cannot wrap my head around it, because I've seen her physicality. And the fact that, she's just sort of like going all gung-ho. When I go visit her every day, she's sort of like stitching. She has like 10 new projects all the time, and so much ambition even at 82. And it just makes me think, because when I compare it, my grandfather had retired at 75, and the minute he retired, that's, I think, when a lot of that loneliness came in, when he started watching TV and all of those things, when he stopped being active. So I just see that, like, what you're saying is real in, I think, all of our own lives. And the fact that there are now opportunities, communities, which you guys have outlined in the book, because what I liked also about the book is that it's not only these stories, but also very practical tips and all of that, which I'll give into. But yeah, coming to my favorite story, I think there is one story in the spirituality chapter about a lady and her husband who were captured by militants. I found that story so fascinating, because by the end of the whole thing, they have actually sort of co-opted the militants in a way, as in like they were sort of like managed to show them compassion and make friends with them. And sort of change the situation. And I found that story so fascinating. Another one that I really, really liked is the story of a woman who studied dance therapy at TIS. And she became a dance therapist in her late 60s, and she does workshops. I found that so amazing, because me and Michelle were talking about it, and we were like, we want to do so many things in life, and we're like, oh, we're running out of time. It's too late now. But this, I think this book is not only inspiration for that age group, but also to people like us. So that's what I really like. But what about, you both of you have come across so many people, and these people are real in your lives. So which stories sort of stand out to you?
Very hard to tell. Like both the examples, all the examples both of you took are our favorites also. In fact, the example you took from the spirituality chapter, that's a very powerful story. It's very goosebumpy. Nidhi can tell you a bit more later about it, because she interviewed that lady and I think she had goosebumps while she was talking to her. So the thing is, it's very hard to say which story is one of the, which story is like the closest, but of course, everyone is, impactful, and everyone has done something path-breaking in their own area, because being path-breaking doesn't just mean you are, running a marathon or climbing the mountain, or you've done something huge. There are two stories I want to quickly share. One is a person who's, I didn't speak to her because I heard her story from her physiotherapist. And we have named her Mrs. K because she's no more. So we did not know if we would have permission to share her whole name. But it's a simple story of someone who said, I will choose to remain active till the end of my days, no matter what. She didn't have major goals, she didn't say, mujhe jaake bahar bhagna hai, or I want to, accomplish 100 kilometers in this thing, which is all great. But her simple thing was, I need to be able to walk on my own. I need to maintain my mobility till my last days. And she asked her physiotherapist how she could achieve that, and followed whatever guidelines she was given regarding this. To me, that's a very powerful story, because that is the story of many people across India when they're growing older. Mobility is a huge issue. By the time people are 40, 48, I'm 48. I have friends who say, yeah, I started getting knee pain. Oh God, are we becoming old? We all have these. These are inevitabilities of age. But for someone who did not really have to, she was, she had the resources to be catered to by domestic help and everything, but who said, this is how I will live, and having that will and following it through, that makes it very powerful. The other one is of this lady in Pune, Asavari, who actually decided to be in a live-in relationship because she met a person whom she liked, and none of them wanted to go through the other rigors of getting married. And they said, we are old enough, we have done things in life, we have fulfilled our so-called responsibilities, and we don't want to stay together, we want to enjoy our life together, and why should we really bother about what people are saying? This is what we want to do, and we'll go ahead and do it. And this is a very middle class person in an extremely middle class locality in Pune, and to have that strength of mind to follow this through is amazing. So these, if I were to pick up, it's very hard, but these two would be that I would talk about. Nidhi, you want to mention yours?
Yeah, no, before I mention my stories, I actually wanted to say that, while we have encountered many such inspiring stories, like how Tara was just quoting her grandmother's example, I think whatever said and done, in spite of all that experience that we've had and all these stories that we have listened to, every new story leaves us, still very shocked and startled. Okay, wow, this can still happen. Like how you said, she's in her 80s. As per you, she is frail, but she is actually making the most of her life, even at this age, right? And I think that resilience and that perseverance that many of these older adults exhibit, I think it's very, very inspiring. In fact, for me, the biggest, eye opener was when we started working in this space. And when we would approach people, kind of trying to explain to them what Silver Talkies was all about, what are we doing? The funniest and the weirdest part for us used to be when people would say, yeah, okay, I will connect you to another senior in my family or in my network, while they themselves, age-wise, qualified to be a senior, right? So it took us a lot of time to really even understand that it's not the number that matters when you are talking about age. It's about how you're feeling in your head internally, how you are feeling is all that matters, right? And I think that was a very powerful learning, which we have seen kind of coming across to us in all the stories that we have, even with our current members that we have part of the Silver Talkies Club. Each one is a very shining example of how age is just a simple number. It's about how they are rediscovering themselves in this phase of life when they have more opportunity, more freedom, right? For example, the other day we had one, we had a panel discussion around the book that we were talking about life and death. And we asked, we had a panel of 3. And the question that we asked each one of them was that if you were to define one ingredient which makes your life fulfilling and empowering in your 50s, there were 3 different answers which came. The lady in the group, in the panel, Tara Kini, she said, for me, it's the freedom, the time that I have now to take care of myself and pursue the activities that I can. For somebody else, it was social networking and his community, the power that it gave him. Somebody else said it is about acceptance, moving away from denial about my age and my, where I am at. It is about accepting where I am and then moving on from there, right? So I think that itself has a lot to say about how these older adults are approaching their life now. And just to quickly then, I think for me, the most powerful story other than Khemlatha Bakluji's, who you said in the spirituality chapter, who speaks about the militants, I think that is my favorite too, because at the end of it, I actually ended up calling her BG because she reminded me so much of my own grandmother, the fairiness and everything. So I call her BG now. And her story indeed was very powerful. And what she says in the end, that I am all of 85 and I feel every bit of it. And I am very okay with it, and how she kind of uses the metaphor that how a tree grows, right? It will bear fruit, it will bloom, right? And at the end, that fruit will drop. So it's as simple as that approach to life, right? Just accept it for what it is. So I think those words that she quoted in the end were very, very powerful. And to me, the story of Rajni Chandy stands out again a lot, because I think her attitude towards life, that I don't give a damn what you think about me and my choices. I will do what I want, because I don't know how many years or how many days I have left in my life to do what I want to do. So in spite of all the brickbats that she received, all the condemnation that she received after she did that photo shoot, but how she took it on such so headstrong, and went ahead in her way, doing modeling. Then she became part of movies. To me, that attitude that I don't give a damn, it's my life, I will live it my way. I think that to me is the mantra that I would like to live by, that it's my life, that's it. You are nobody to tell me what, nobody to dictate about it.
Yeah, like, what I found so interesting about the book also is that when we think of old people, typically in India, we have a very close relationship with our grandparents and parents, even though the structures and the way we live might be changing. But when we think of older people, we think of tradition, we think of people that are very set in their ways. So, the example of the woman who was in a live-in, or all of these people sort of, actually tasting freedom was very interesting. And it also made me think it's getting reflected now in our movies and in our TV shows as well. So it made me think of recently Lust Stories had come out with an anthology. And the first story in Lust Stories was about a grandmom. And basically the story is that the granddaughter is getting married. And the grandmom tells the granddaughter, you can't get married until you have sex with your fiance, and you must enjoy it. And everybody's scandalized, and but it really shows sort of, there is sort of changing narrative of what we also think of older people, and what they also think about tradition and the role of tradition in our lives. So I found that part very interesting in the book.
Yeah, I think that was your favorite chapter, right, Tara? The love, the dating bit
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
second half. And for me, actually, for me, the second innings chapter, so there's a chapter where, like you mentioned, all these sort of different professions that older people can pursue. And I think that was my favorite because, like, my maternal grandmother, I have literally seen her, she's no more, but I had seen her blossom in the second half of her life. In the first half, she was this, quite subtle, meek person. And also because my granddad was kind of very strict, and I always assumed that that's her personality. And to the shock of, like, I got the shock of my life when, after my granddad passed away, and I just saw a whole different side of her. She started talking more, she started watching all these serials, discussing these stories with us, and then she ran a shop, she maintained the accounts. I was like, oh, who is this woman? I didn't even know that she could do all these things. And it was just, that is the reason I really loved the second innings chapter, because a lot of people don't know that there are opportunities for you after retirement, right? Because you do mention certain professions, like it could be accounting, right? It could be translation projects, it could be teaching, it could be hobbies that you could turn into ventures, like it could even be knitting, right? So there's this woman that you've mentioned, Chakraborty, right, who age 75 started her own venture called the Sari Show. So I'm very curious to know, how did you find out about these opportunities, and where does one go look for them, if anyone's curious about starting a second inning?
I think you must know Jayashree is Reshmi's mom, who I was telling you about, who
Yeah.
paints those beautiful dupattas and saris.
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah.
but Michelle, it's very interesting you mentioned about your grandmother. In fact, I would love to know more about your grandmother, both your grandmothers actually later. Both of us would love to know later. My mother also, this part of her life, I knew she always painted and she had that artistic bent. And we did see her starting it even when we were, in the later years of our school and everything. But the way she sort of ran with it as she grew older, when she had more time to herself, was amazing. And even now, in fact, my brother has this joke. My brother runs a startup and he has this joke here, I should have, she should have been like this startup CEO. She was born in the wrong generation. She's very, she's very, very methodical, even if she has a very limited number of clients, because she doesn't want to really take on the load of training anyone. She wants to do the painting and everything herself. So she has a very limited number of people. But she's so methodical and so clear, and she follows a certain pattern and so disciplined in her work that we really kind of sometimes keep thinking that why do we, and she also faces this very often from many people in the extended family who say, but why do you need to do this? She loves sitting at night and painting, and innumerable number of people have told her, Arey, why are you hurting your eyes? Why are you, so I want them using this example to highlight how it's not the older adults who are limiting themselves. Very often we are the ones who are limiting them. There's so much of subconscious ageism that is there in most of our minds. Nidhi and I have also gone through this, right? We are very aware of all these things now because of our work. I'm sure we have been guilty of subconscious ageism, and probably even now at times, because we really try to limit older adults. And if they wish to see, aging is really how you want it to pan out for you. If you wish to be this active person, you want to explore certain areas in your life that you've been interested in, or certain opportunities that you've discovered, nobody should be really trying to limit you by bringing in factors like your like health or anything else. So that is the reason I asked that story. To come back to second career opportunities, yes, there are multiple things, and while they are there is also, it is also not that easy to really look at a second innings in India. Unlike Western countries, we really don't have that kind of a structure in place, though a change is coming there. There is a government portal that was launched called Secret, which it's a acronym for something, which this is an area the government is also working on, and there are several organizations which are working on second innings. In fact, I'll ask Nidhi to talk about it in a bit because she's more clued into that area than I am. But at the same time, while we were researching this chapter, we came across people who told us the amount of challenges they had faced. One was in their own minds. There is a person mentioned in the chapter who worked at a very senior position, and he started with this organization in Bangalore called Hatti Kapi, which is known for employing seniors. And he was telling us how it was, he had to realign himself, his mind, and say, so that organization basically had this rule that whoever starts on their shop floor has to do a certain it's part of their training, had to be in the servicing area. And he said how difficult it was for him to accept it, that he who had sort of been in leadership positions was doing this. And then he obviously realigned himself. He said, I want to be active, I want to earn an income, and this is what I'll do. And he continued to work for the company. So it's a lot of realigning of your own mindset and also the people around you. At the same time, there is the example of a lady who's a very senior editor who has not been given opportunities in younger newsrooms. And she's actually heard somebody tell her that, look at this. She has a head full of gray hair. And she's been told that, look at this newsroom. It's full of young people. Do you think you'll be able to adapt here? So there are both sides. There are amazing opportunities coming up with the many organizations which are working towards a second career. At the same time, there are also challenges like this, which is, of course, ageism, and we don't have generational diversity as a conversation among corporates, at least until now. So yes, multiple areas.
So I think just adding on to what Reshmi said, so while the government did start out that sacred portal, which was looking at second career opportunities, but unfortunately, for reasons not really known to me clearly, but they had to shut down. It's not functional anymore. But having said that, there is definitely, there are more organizations who are recognizing this opportunity, and they are working on really putting together their minds on it and see how best can you really utilize the experience and wisdom of seniors and place them in roles which would, but I think probably the fact of the matter is that I think it's not the traditional roles or the traditional, form of employment that one would be looking at. These could be contractual, these could be part-time, these could be gig-based, project based, because that's where you probably can utilize them the best. Because to Reshmi's point, I think it is also a lot to do with also the fact, for example, the seniors in our community, right? They also want their independence to, say, travel. They also want their time to visit family. So they are also not wanting to be very committed to a full-time role, right? So I think finding that balance between what older adults would want at that age, while definitely wanting to stay productive. And for some of them, definitely the motivation may also be money, because not everybody draws a pension or has their finances covered, right? So for them, many of them, it is also about finances, right? So I think that change is happening, but it's a very gradual shift. And it would require a mindset change on both sides, from the employer side and from the employee side, right? So for example, things like the education sector or the social sector, you may find opportunities more easy to come by, because it's somehow, I think they are it's very easy to map age with the kind of opportunities that these sectors have to offer. But if you were to go to a proper corporate environment, people will shy away, saying, oh, that generation is not as tech savvy, right? So a lot of these issues then come up, and then the time commitment, and then also things about, would you be willing to come to the office every day versus, what kind of adjustment do I want in my lifestyle? So there are a lot of moving parts in that conversation. But then there are definitely, like, some of the simplest examples, I think, that we have quoted in the book, which you said, like translation, content writing. We do know of many people who are doing that very effectively. I'll give you one small example from somebody from our community who recently, she just reached her 70s. She has been a school principal for the longest time, and she loves her job. She's been doing it. But then at 70, she consciously decided to kind of finally say, okay, I am willing to give this up and try something else, right? And it was a very conscious decision that she took. She spent a lot of time evaluating, considering it. But when she retired, when she actually gave up her, a much loved position as the principal, she actually had a game plan already ready. She knew that she wanted to learn music. As soon as she gave up her post, she's already she enrolled herself in a career counseling course, because she wants to, since it's related to her sector of education, now she's exploring the opportunity to be a career counselor. She's doing courses around it, right? So she really put a plan in place, so that one thing was very clear for her, that she did not want to really idle away her time. She didn't really want to feel bored or have, be without a purpose. So I think so it's an amalgamation of all these different factors: the mindset, the sense of purpose, and of course the opportunity, which can make a second career really happen for someone, even at that age.
I think what you said about ageism, we've all sort of been guilty of that. I had an intern who was 65 years old. And I also used to having interns who were 18, so when this intern sort of joined, my first reaction was obviously, like, how come, why, not to his face, but obviously, like, internally, I was a little confused. And this was around 10 years ago, when I myself was only 23. So, and he told me that, look, I really want to work in publishing, and I've had this corporate career and I want to explore this. And I actually, really found that quite amazing, that because there's so many barriers, as you said, right? And also like the ego barrier, having had such an illustrious career and then coming in to work under a 23-year-old as an intern. So all of those things. And I think definitely, we have to be a lot more accepting, and hopefully there are way more opportunities, because there are a lot of moving parts for sure. What I really liked about the book is also that the way that it's structured. So it's divided into There's a chapter on fitness, there's a chapter on spirituality, there's a chapter on finding love later on in life. We spoke about finding your career, changing your career. So there's so many different aspects that you'll cover. And I really like the fact that it's not only the stories which we've spoken about extensively, but it is also that, you've interviewed, people who are offering seniors roles to play. There's a portal called 60 plus jobs. You speak to, a matchmaker who is matchmaking these seniors, psychiatrists, NGOs. There's a whole ecosystem, which I find very heartening that we can plug into. But I did want to touch upon the fact that, firstly, like obviously you mentioned before, this is a very urban sort of setting that we're operating in, where only a few kinds of people might even have access to these resources that you'll have outlined. And second thing is that the experience of old age itself is so varied, right? 55 to, there are centenarians, 100. That's a very big sort of range. So how did you sort of, try to address that in the book in any way, or, take those varied experiences and also include them?
One of the things that, to come back to the book first, the reason we have the chapters the way we have them is because the book is based on the various principles of active aging, which is a WHO defined concept that, allows you to develop and maintain your functional abilities across various well-being markers into your, into your later years. And these are not just physical markers, these are emotional, your social, spiritual, environmental, multiple things. So the chapters are all based on that, vocational. So the second innings chapter will be vocational, spirituality. Then there's a chapter on aging in place. That would be the environmental one. So this is the base of the book. One of the things we wanted to know, aging pans out differently for everybody, even within the urban, even if we look at urban India, middle to upper middle class milieu, within that also, it pans out differently for everyone based on their, socioeconomic status, based on the various factors, all these, all these active aging factors, all these well-being markers that we spoke about. So it pans out all differently. So we wanted to bring in, various aspects of it, not just the positive aspect. Not everyone, like Nidhi just mentioned, the member of ours, that person is a true active ager, and her circumstances, the environment she lives in also enables that, her own mindset. But not everyone has that really in place. So which is why we brought out examples from everywhere. So one of the examples we have in the book is of this couple called the Lavates, who actually petitioned for euthanasia. It made big news at that time, and both of us happened to be at this event called Good Pitch, where their experience was being pitched for a documentary. And we had a very brief interaction with them, and we had an interaction with the filmmaker who was trying to bring their story forward. And it was such an eye-opener. Again, they're urban elders, they're in Bombay, but they do not see anything left to live for in terms of, how circumstances have been there for them, in terms of, how aging has panned out for them. They don't really see any value in it, or they don't really see anything left for them to continue living. So at the same time, and we have stories of all these people who are gung-ho. Someone is who's getting a PhD at 75, someone who's getting a dance therapy thing at after retirement, education in dance therapy. So it all really varies depending on your on your factors. We also have in the mental health chapter, we've tried to bring out both sides of the story. There is somebody who is really grappling with a mental health condition, and there is someone who has accepted it and is actually talking to us about it, that this is what I discovered, and there is no shame in it, and this is the help I'm getting. So really it is there is no, one of the things that we hope would be a takeaway from the book is that there is no one visual to aging. It has multiple visuals, and how people choose to, you can enable and empower, you can bring in facilities that, enable all these things, enable people to empower themselves, enable people to equip themselves. But at the end of the day, you cannot really put it under one umbrella. There are multiple things that, aging is dependent on, including the individual's mindset itself.
Yeah, totally. I actually like that balance, sort of like I was telling Tara also, like while you see a lot of people blossoming, and especially in this hustle culture, that because we as people in our 30s see on social media and everywhere, everyone's out there doing their best, and that is just amazing to see that also you can do that later on in life, right? But you also have the other side of the story where people do not have anything to look out for. But there was one thing that there was a constant thought that I had while reading, is I feel that caregivers are not given enough exposure in our society, because from experience, so my auntie, she spent most of her life looking after old people, right? So it's been like her parents, and it's been her in-laws, and it's like it's this never ending cycle, and I feel really, really bad for her. And I often wonder, because as a country, obviously, things can get better, infrastructure can get better, there are a lot of support stuff that can get better, but was it something that crossed your mind while you all wrote the book? Was caregiving a part of it? While I know that yes, the focus is on the older people, but was that something that came across? Because I do think that this is something which is a very common factor, where parents live with you and then you become the caregiver.
So yes, this did come across, but one of the reasons, and it's a very important aspect, the sandwich generation is a real thing. Just among our members within the Silver Talkies community, we know so many people who themselves are in their 60s, late 60s, 70s, and who are caring for super seniors in the family. So yes, it did come across, but one of the reasons we didn't focus on it in this book is because the premise was slightly different. What we focused on, in fact, since this has come up, one of the things we focused on is how, you may be going through a certain life experience, say an experience as a caregiver, but at the same time, it's possible to look forward and deal with things later. So we have one story right at the beginning of the book. She's a member of ours, Shakuntala Pai, who was a caregiver for 25 years. In fact, her mother lived up to be a centenarian, and she cared for 3 super seniors in her house. And she actually, once her caregiving duties came to an end, she herself was in her 70s, and she didn't say, now is the time for me to put my feet up and sit, I have done enough all my life. She actually took off, and she's trained. She discovered a love for art, and she trained herself. And even now, because she's a member of ours, we get to see her work very often. She trained herself in multiple forms of art, and this was all during the pandemic, through various YouTube tutorials. And then she also recently got an opportunity to be part of a one-act play. And very recently, she told Nidhi that now acting is the area she wants to explore, theater and acting. So all these, and at the same time, she's not, she's never resentful of her caregiving years, though that's a very, very, very difficult balance to achieve. She did not lose, it did not, it did not make her lose any of her personal aspirations or faith in life, if we have to put it in a cliched way. And that story, to me personally, and I think to many of us, is one that shows that, again, the different facets of aging. One is where you may have to deal with certain things, certain issues, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that there is an end to your own aspirations. You can take them up anytime in life. So just to quickly bring in something, there are many areas that actually we have not been able to cover in this book, because the scope was towards covering, the more active aging, the various factors that make for active aging. But there is so much to talk about aging in India. In fact, the conversation is just starting, but there are so many aspects of it that, we really haven't explored, and we would love to if given a chance later.
Rani, I just wanted to add also another perspective here. Like, I think it is also, so for example, I have seen my mom also being a caregiver to my grandmother, right? My grandmother lived on to up till her age of 97. And I think the last 6 months of her life was when she really needed active caregiving. And I had seen my mom go through it and even suffer through it, because there was so much of burden of expectations from extended family members. Everybody coming and asking my mom for not being enough or for not doing enough, right? And that is a reality, right? That age generation, that generation of our own parents probably accepted it as a given that they have to take care of their older family members, right? It is something which came very naturally to them and which was kind of considered and accepted as a part of their role and responsibility, which they have to go through, right? So while they may have found it very difficult, and definitely support was not something which was as readily available as it is probably today, because you have many new ventures which give you home care attendants and facilities like that. So it was very an accepted norm, and many a times you will not even have family members who would probably share that burden with you. So you may be a sole caregiver who had to really be taking care of it all. So
Exactly.
so it's a very personal life story there, right? Now, a couple of examples which come to my mind from our own club members who we have seen up close and personal, right? There are two stories. Like, one of our members, she was a caregiver to her mother for a decade, and her mother was a person with dementia. And dementia is no easy situation to tackle with, right? And that whole situation kind of had this lady give up her job. She became very introverted. She lost her social circle and everything there. And we met her on few occasions at some events and stuff. But when we started out Silver Talkies Club, she was among the first few members to join, because by then her mother had passed on, and she was kind of free of that caregiving responsibility. But her reason for becoming a member was that I have really lost my ability to be social, and I would like to find it again. And that's why she chose to be a member, right? Similarly, another member of ours, she joined us when she was a caregiver to her husband, who also had dementia. She was an active caregiver when she met us. In her case, she was a very social person already. She had a lot of friends she would very often meet, and she had activities to keep herself engaged. But then her kids were very kind of very aware. Her son is very involved in her in her whole journey, and is very responsible, takes care of a lot of things for her. So I think through a conversation that the son was having with a psychologist friend, he was advised that, whatever said and done, your mom may be a caregiver, but you need to take care of your mother, right? While she is taking care of your father, you need to take care of your mother. And she advised him that, you should be taking on the role where you encourage her to really take care of herself. And I think through that conversation, she found Silver Talkies Club, and she was one of our early members who joined us in 2018. The husband passed on a few years later, and she's still a member. And she herself now recently has moved into a retirement living community, because she was all by herself. And now that she's aging, she's seeing the, after COVID, she's, her health issues came up majorly and all that stuff. But the point being that I think one needs to kind of sometimes, I think it's about denial versus acceptance. How do you deal with it? What kind of support system you can garner yourself around with it? And how well can you take care of yourself? Because in fact, I was telling somebody yesterday, I wrote this email to someone. So I had very recently shared on my LinkedIn about my challenges with depression and how I am on medication and stuff. And somebody who had read that post wrote back to me saying that I salute you for acknowledging it publicly on LinkedIn. I haven't found that courage yet. And while I have battled depression in the past, she is currently a caregiver for her husband, who's going through a severe case of cancer. So she says, I don't have the courage to acknowledge it to my community, right? And I think that's where we, it's a very personal journey. Like there are cases where we know families hide the fact that a person in their house has dementia, because they struggle with the questions that will come with it, or the kind of issues they would have to grapple with, right? So caregiving is never easy. And to Reshmi's point, yes, we did not cover it in the book because the book had a very different scope, but it's a very, very real issue. And I think it's a very real issue which needs to be spoken about and talked about even more now. To your point, what Michelle, how you were sharing, right? We are seeing India growing very rapidly, and very soon we will have many more elderly people in our society, which would mean the burden on the younger adults to be taking care of these older adults, it's only going to increase many-fold, right? So caregiving burden is something which is going to be a much bigger issue in the long term, in the near term. And if not dealt with right now, where you are probably investing in making sure that your parents are active, they are taking care of themselves, where you as a child are empowering them to take care of themselves, I think one needs to be prepared for that caregiving, which will kind of stumble upon you very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many, there's so many aspects to aging. It's such a big topic. And obviously, we can't cover it in one book. We can't cover it in an hour. Obviously, there's just so many dimensions. It's a very interesting space as well to be in as entrepreneurs, I'm sure, because I mean, we are going to get more of an aging population. I'm very curious, about the response in the audience of the book, because when I got it, so Penguin actually sent me a review copy. That's how I got to know about the book. And I placed it on my dad's sort of like where he eats breakfast. So before he eats breakfast, I just placed it there. And I came home from work and I said, "Did you look at it?" And he said, "Yeah, but I don't need it, So I want to know, what is sort of the response, because it's a very inspiration and an amazing book. Anyone who's sort of in this cohort, I think should definitely read it, because it gives you tips. It gives you all of these amazing stories. You can take so much from it. And it really changes the narrative of what, aging means, and active aging. Because when we think of aging, we think, oh, I'm just going to sort of, like bad and like bad health and then all those negative connotations. But so what is the audience, how is the audience response been to this book? Is it younger people? Is it like people in this cohort? Tell us a little more about that.
So, I want to quickly tell you, because you mentioned the visual, and how it's all negative. So we've been fortunate to have the book at quite a few lit festivals since last December. And whenever Nidhi and I are not part of a panel and, it's just us talking about the book, we usually ask the audience a question that if you had to think of a graphic about aging, what comes to your mind? And the younger people in the audience always say things like, oh, support, like a person bent over a stick, someone holding, all these typical hospital logos. You see a person holding an umbrella over someone who's bent over a stick. And all we ask them to think of a word, if not a visual. And all the elderly people say things like independence, freedom, running, walking, mountain climbing. I mean, name it, all the active things come up. Only younger people, I remember at Bangalore Lit Fest, there was this girl who said, yes, these are the very young girl who did not mention frailty, anything, because she had been with, I think, grandparents, right? Grandparents who were like these, who she saw them, age in a very active way. So yes, the response has been very interesting. Usually after any talk we have had, a lot of young people, one question we are always asked is, who's this book for? And we always say this book is for everyone, especially like you said, anyone in this cohort, younger people who are, looking at the older years. Young people have come up to us a lot, people in their 30s, 40s, because they say that, hey, suddenly we are seeing that there are all these possibilities which we hadn't realized, and largely for their parents. So the response actually has been interesting, in the sense the same reaction you had with your father, I have at least had with a few friends' parents who are, who don't even think of age. It is not a thought that has occurred to them ever, because they are leading their lives in a very in the same active way that they led probably when they were 50. They may be, you know, in their late 70s, early 80s now, but they have never slowed down, so to speak. The only thing is that, yeah, they may be pursuing more leisure activities as opposed to going to office and showing up for work. So those people usually say, no, I don't need this book at all. But at the same time, people our age, I'm, you know, in their late 40s, mid 40s, have actually shown a lot of interest, because for many of them, it has been a bit of an eye opener, simply in terms of the things that can be done as you grow older. Because somewhere we tend to think that, you know, age, retirement is like a, you know, pause in life. You slow down, you don't do much, there isn't much options left. So yes, that that reaction has definitely happened. In fact, before, you know, Nidhi tells you, someone just very quickly told me, this is a person close to you know, retirement, and we have a couple of instances in the book where someone who planned his retired years, he's also a member of ours and he's a very senior advocate, Mr. Shiv Kumar, and he talked about how he had consciously planned a few things for his you know, older years, which are now like things like, he's a lawyer, so things which did not involve law at all, theater, music, several things that he learned, and how those things are holding him in good stead now as he's grown older. And there's another person who's talked about conscious aging, which is basically preparing yourself with things that will enrich you, give you a sense of purpose in the later years of your life. And a friend of mine who's closer to retirement age actually said, hey, you know what, maybe I should now start pursuing these things, because you at the end of the day, you need to expand your mind and your hobbies. So yes, that is one reaction. Nidhi will tell you about the reactions that she has come across.
You know, I think what you have experienced with, you know, your father reacting to the book, and I think it comes back to what I had said, you know, people just do not accept that age that they are in, because in their mind they are not there yet, right? So we've had that kind of feedback from a few, but then people who have read the book, you know, I think they have appreciated it a lot. We've had one professor who said this book should be found in every library and everybody should read it. We have had a geriatrician who said, whatever we geriatric doctors would like to tell our patients and are unable to because of paucity of time, this book says it all and it should be read by everyone. And to, you know, what Reshmi was saying, for younger people who have read it, actually, that was the biggest surprise to my mind, because one, while we were very consciously writing it for anyone and everyone, because we wanted the audience to be, you know, more broad-based, and we were not addressing a particular age segment, so to say. But what I had not expected was even kids who are in their early 20s to find the book relatable. And this came very, you know, evidently to me when, you know, I was at the Vidarbha Lit Fest. And after I finished my session, I actually had about 2 or 3 you know, youngsters come up to me with very specific situations that they were observing at their own homes. You know, for example, one girl said, my father is, you know, has been a lawyer, he just retired, and I suddenly see him lost all his purpose. You know, he is just sitting at home and I don't know how to help him. I invite him for coming out, but you know, there is only so many times that he would come out, and rest of the times he would say, I don't want to go. Why spend money on something like this, right? And I had, you know, given her a few tips on how she could help him find a part-time job where he could still utilize his skills and all. Then another girl came up to me, and this was a very different situation where she said she is working from home, and her father has this sudden expectation that they would go traveling very often just because she's working from home, right? She said in the last 1 year, the amount of travel that we have done is, and when she said the number, it was like almost every month they were going out. And this was not like a day trip or anything. They were actually traveling. And the sibling who was in another city was also expected. So for the parents, it had become like a reason for a family gathering, right? And she said, I can't keep up with that pace. I'm struggling to, you know, really do that and meet their expectations. And in this case, I had to tell her that, you know, you maybe will need to define your boundaries, and you will have to explain them that while you're going on holiday, just because you have working from home, you end up working while on your holiday, and it's not serving the purpose. So you may have to come up with a number that you can balance with, right? So I think so the book actually brought out a lot of personal situations, and people come in and asking us about very specific, and these are very, very young kids who really did not know how to approach their parents with in certain situations. So I think that way the book and the conversations have touched a chord, and it in a way, in a larger way, is very age agnostic.
Yeah, totally. No, and I really liked this exercise that y'all do. Y'all ask people to think of the graphic, and I just did that exercise when y'all asked us. And my vision is me sitting at a laptop. I mean, not a very exciting vision, but my sitting at the laptop and writing. Like my dream is to like write for as long as I can, and I do hope that's going to be possible. But anyway, but I just listening about all these stories, and especially the kind of value a book can sort of play, like you said, right? Even a doctor would rather give this to a patient for them to understand, because you only have limited space of time to sort of make your point, right? So what I want to know is, how do books play a larger role in the lives of sort of these people that you have worked with in Silver Talkies, right? For example, is there a book club? Is there a way for them to react? Because there was a instance in the book that I really liked. So her name is Jayashree Kannan, and how she came across this book, and it just changed the way she was sort of dealing with the things in her life. And the book is called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise. So I really want to know a little bit about that.
So before I delve into your question, Michelle, I'll also tell you this. The other common question that we ask on all these interactions is that when you speak to your parents, what is the most common question you ask them? Can you guess what the answer we get?
No.
How are you feeling? Like something about health. Yeah.
About health. And when you're referring to health, what are you usually referring to? You're referring to their physical health.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. So even that lack of understanding of how health is so much beyond physical health, it's also about the emotional and social well-being and the mental well-being. That has also been one common thread, where we find that there is complete lack of understanding and awareness of how health is so much beyond physical health, right? So that's something which we have tried to bring through that structure related question that you were asking about the book, right? The different aspects of holistic well-being that one needs to look at. Regarding so I think the role books play, I think we in our group have many voracious readers, and I think books do leave a huge impact on their lives. And many a times, as you said, Jayashree Kannan's was one example where the book really transformed how she really handled her cancer situation, right? Because it really opened up new vistas for her to understand what she was dealing with and why she was dealing with it, and it helped her cope, and it changed the trajectory which she was on. So I think books can be very, very impressionable, and can, if it's something really strikes you, touches you, it can. I have also read that book. In fact, Louise, hey, You Can Heal Your Life. And I think the perspective that you get from books like that, or even, the power of subconscious mind and things like that, it can be anything which can, just make a huge impact. That's all I can say about it. But Reshmi is a much bigger reader than I am. So maybe she has another different perspective to it.
No, I'm no longer. Netflix has beaten reading. but so yes, definitely books can have a huge impact. In fact, when it comes to our, within the community, one of the things we try and foster are varied interests. And so within within our club, so the literary club is actually something we run with our members. And we do see a lot of interest there. We try and get different authors every month to have a small Zoom interaction. Like we are a hybrid model. So most of our interactions and events are online currently. And it's quite interesting, the things that come up. We've, for instance, we had Kamini Dandapani, who's written very recently. She's written on Chawlas. And while she was having that interaction with the members, the kind of questions that come up, so, and they do their homework many times. So it just shows that, it's a great way to expand your thought. And the more you introduce them to different books, different ideas, we've had, as part of the Lit Club and interactions, we have had someone talking about, not just history, but someone talking about, we have had the romance writer Andali Wajid. And when she was talking, I actually thought, and like, these are all the surprises we constantly get. We still have, I think it's very hard to get out of certain set stereotypes. For instance, when she was talking, I felt they won't be that interested. And the way they delved into, they made her bring out, what really drove her characters, what really were the aspects of her own life that helped her build up those characters. So it kind of shows that, somewhere that wisdom and experience of years, that perspective is very different from many of our perspectives. The perspective that you probably have at 70 is going to be very different from what we will have in our 40s. And somewhere literature helps bring it out, at least to my mind, and I'm just saying this, off the top of my head, remembering the interactions we have in the Lit Club, the perspective it helps to bring out in people is very different and very powerful. It's a great way to kind of start conversations. It's a great way to delve into certain, what do I say, certain taboo areas or difficult to speak about areas. So yes, definitely think that's while that is not the core of our work, it's a small part of the Silver Talkies Club, but it is a great way to bring those interesting conversations out. Hope we have answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we work with a few elders ourselves because, what you said about wisdom, right? Like, these people have so many amazing stories that they want to capture, and their grandparents and children want them to be captured, right, before they sort of go away. So we actually help, people write down their own stories. And it all started because when my granddad was diagnosed with cancer, he was like, what, I want you to write a book about my life. So we spent, months together collating, I was interviewing him. He was an architect, talking to his clients, photographing his houses. And I was very happy because before he went, I could present him with that book. And he also, I could tell was really, really happy because even in the last stages of his life, it was sort of, he really wanted to tell all his grandchildren his stories, all his lessons. He was constantly wanting to sort of impart that information. I could see that he wanted to do it. And then having it sort of in that sort of book structure, I think was really, really amazing. And also him knowing that like all of that is going to sort of like be kept in one place forever was really great. So that aspect is how we sort of, try and contribute in a little way and sort of like, capture these stories. So now that brings us to the second last section of the interview, which is our quiz round. And Michelle is our quiz master. So Michelle, take it ahead.
Yeah, so we call it a fun quiz, from all it's sort of like this, it lightens up the mood. So, I mean, I could, Reshmi or Nidhi, either of you could answer the questions, okay? So I'm going to give you options. You have to pick one. One exercise an old person should start their day with. A, breathing. B, headstand. C, cartwheel.
I don't think age is the criteria here. Everybody should start with breathing.
Okay. Okay, Reshmi, what was your option? Was it the same?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. One phrase that's an absolute no at Silver Talkies. A, I can't do this. B, tomorrow. C, let me see.
I think I can't do this.
For me, it would be let me see.
Okay, interesting. Both the sides. Okay. One common thread that you have encountered in all your interactions. A, memory loss. B, loneliness. C, frustration.
Loneliness.
Yeah, same.
Oh, okay. All right. If a retired person had to pick one thing and do that really well, what would you recommend? A, meditation, B, walking every day, C, laughter club.
Not between laughter club and walking every day, but I would probably go for laughter club.
Okay, all right. So that brings us to the end of it. And now we have our last rapid fire round. And here, what you're going to do is you're going to give us rapid answers. No thinking, no cheating. Okay. All right. This is for Nidhi. Okay. One habit of Reshmi that you have observed and that you think will run into her 60s.
She thinks a lot.
Okay, same question for Reshmi.
I love the same answer. We both think a lot. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Hmm.
One inspirational quote that always does wonders for older people at Silver Talkies.
I would not say quote, but I think it's a phrase. Age is just a number.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Okay. What is the must ingredient for a senior living home if you could build the ideal one?
One which is centrally located. It's not like in the deserts and the jungles of the city, which is more centrally located, allowing them to be active and mobile and go around.
Yeah, so true. All of the senior living facilities are always sort of, yeah. Okay, one chapter you both have opposing views on, because this is a co-written book.
We don't think we
I
have
don't think so,
opposing
yeah.
views on that. Very honestly, no, we don't. We may have slightly different perspectives to add to some of them, but no. The chapters are fairly similar views.
Awesome.
What is your next
Yeah.
book? Next book.
A sequel to the present one.
Yes, we'd love to, probably we'd love to bring a few more aspects which are not highlighted here. We don't have, like you said, there is no caregiving. We haven't spoken about mortality really. We haven't spoken about women's health issues, which are so huge as they grow older. So yes, we'd love to do a book where we look at, again, not in a sad, depressing way at all, because we don't see that when we look at the way age is working out for a lot of our community members. We see them dealing with all these so-called frailties and negative aspects of age, but work their way around it, deal with it to the best extent possible. So, and also the community beyond our members and others. So yes, we would love to do
Yes.
something.
Yeah, we would love to read that. And in fact, I was, when I was reading it, I kept marking down what's not there, and I wanted to suggest, please write this in
Please
your
send
next
it.
book.
Please suggest. It would be a huge help.
It will
Yes,
probably trigger that.
I will.
Which we have been
Yeah,
just sitting on it. We are not, going around
Yeah.
thinking about it actively. Maybe that will trigger us to actually put that
it
pin it
could
down.
be the muse.
Yeah,
Yes.
it will help us pin it down.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun speaking to you all, and I think Tara and I just absolutely loved the book, and more than the book, like we said, we love the people that came across, and you as people are so warm and so genuinely interested in older people and the way they sort of live their life, and which is rare to come across. So really, I mean, it's kudos to all of the work that you do at Silver Talkies and for writing this book. I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
We
you
had a
so
great
much.
time too. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and I think I would probably just say the credit for it actually goes to all those inspiring seniors who have shared their stories with us. I think that opened new vistas in our own understanding. So I think that book
completely.
entirely is dedicated to them.
So yeah, thank you so much. And I think, like we're very close to our grandparents. So this was a very special episode because it's really sort of into the home, right? These are people that we love and care about. So thanks for bringing the concept of active aging across. And yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.